Wednesdays are usually quiet. Most financial anomalies start surfacing late Thursday, early Friday, people trying to sneak transactions through before the weekend. That morning, I was reviewing client-side flags on a retail security dashboard, something minor. A gift card transfer pattern out of Missouri didn't match the store's usual behavior curve. I was halfway through writing the code note when my phone buzzed. I want a divorce. I've found someone who actually makes me happy. That was it. No lead-in, no argument, no fight the night before. Just a declaration, surgical final. I remember staring at the screen, thumb hovering over the glass. I blinked once, maybe twice. The buzz came again. I've already moved our retirement funds into my private account. You can keep the house. I don't need it anymore. I didn't stand up, didn't gasp. I just set my phone down next to my coffee and clicked open a second browser window. My name's Eric Langford. I'm 45, a financial systems analyst with a specialty in fraud detection. I design frameworks to monitor large volumes of client-side transactions, spot patterns, flag inconsistencies, automate responses. It's not glamorous work, but it's precise, controlled, predictable. Years ago, after a client lost $1.6 million in internal theft because no one caught the irregular wire paths, I started applying the same principles to my personal life, quietly. Every joint account Melissa and I had ran through a consolidated monitoring dashboard I'd built at home, not out of distrust, out of habit, out of principle. I believe in systems that protect people from themselves. The interface loaded, our retirement accounts were already flagged, a line item marked transfer pending, authentication failed, blinked in red. Melissa had moved funds, several large withdrawals totaling just over $400,000, but the system triggered Tier 3 anti-fraud protocols before it could complete. She didn't know about the multi-step failsafe I had installed after a university breach test last year. Large transfers from retirement sources require two-party authentication and identity reinforcement within 30 minutes. If it's missing, the system assumes fraud. She never made it past step 1. My phone vibrated again, probably another text. I ignored it. Instead, I sipped my coffee, watching the back-end protocols log events in real time. The system had already sent alerts to our banking institution. The receiving account, her private one, was under review. Deposits frozen, automatic inquiry filed, internal review queue initiated. No emotion rose up. Just data. Just the machine doing what it was built to do. I tapped a reply to Melissa. I hope you're happy. 7 words. I reread them once before hitting send. No begging, no questioning, no attempts to fix what she'd so cleanly broken. There are people who throw things when they're betrayed. People who scream, sob, demand answers. That's never been me. I've always trusted numbers more than narratives, patterns over promises. The numbers were clear. The pattern matched 1,000 others I'd studied in client investigations: rapid transfer, sudden communication, emotional disconnection tied to financial misdirection. It's textbook. I clicked back to the Missouri gift card issue. My screen blinked with new log entries, but I wasn't reading them. Not really. I was thinking about Melissa, about how she thought she could outmaneuver a system I'd built. She'd watched me work for years. She'd asked questions, subtle ones. About transfer thresholds, about account structures. I'd answered because I didn't think it mattered. I didn't think she'd use that knowledge against me. She thought I'd be too slow, that I'd be caught flat-footed, that I'd be distracted or hesitant. She forgot who built the system. And the system doesn't care about heartbreak. It only cares about compliance. At 9:46 a.m., a new flag popped up confirming the freeze had been enacted on all flagged transactions. By noon, she'd be locked out of everything she tried to grab. By then, I'd be halfway through my day moving on to someone else's financial mess. Because the thing about fraud is it always leaves a trail, even when it's personal, especially then. Melissa always thought the accounts were split more than they really were. I let her think that not to deceive her, but because she never really paid attention. She had her own checking account, a company credit card, and a few savings accounts she opened back when we were in our 30s. I never questioned her spending. We never fought about money. That's probably why she assumed I wasn't watching, but everything was connected. I'd spent years refining what I called the soft weave monitoring framework. It started simple, just a personal dashboard for tracking our bills, savings goals, and emergency reserves. But after one of my clients got blindsided by a junior accountant who funneled $80,000 through petty cash reimbursements, I got serious. The soft weave became robust. Every account that bore my name, her name, or both ran through a layered system I customized on my home server. Bank logins, card activity, asset movement. Everything funneled into a private interface. Not surveillance, not control, just quiet vigilance. Melissa knew some of it existed. She'd seen me tweak scripts at night, check dashboards after dinner, but she didn't understand how deep it went. She thought I tracked my retirement, my portfolio, and maybe the joint checking. That's it. She didn't know that every financial move we made triggered a conditional response, each with its own thresholds, alerts, and logs. 6 months ago, she started getting curious. We were eating dinner, grilled chicken, broccoli, something simple, and she asked, rough estimate, how much do we have in retirement between the two of us? I didn't think twice. About 780, maybe 800K total. Depends on market shifts. Why? She shrugged. Just wondering. I was talking to someone at work who's thinking about retiring early. I remember that now. The way she held eye contact a little too long. The way her wine glass didn't tremble when she lifted it. That was the first probe. A few weeks later, I noticed she logged into our retirement portal, hers and mine, using her phone. She rarely did that. I didn't intervene. I just made sure her access logged properly. My system created a new alert category, internal spouse inquiry. I wasn't suspicious. Not yet, but after years of studying fraud, you get used to documenting quietly, just in case. The system wasn't made for her. It wasn't even made for me. It was a reaction to failure I saw other people experience. A CFO who lost his entire retirement matching program to a rogue assistant. A nonprofit director whose grants were siphoned into shell LLCs by her second-in-command. They all said the same thing. I never saw it coming. I swore that wouldn't be me. I didn't monitor Melissa out of paranoia. I trusted her, or I thought I did. But I also trusted rules, patterns, systems that didn't get tired, distracted, or emotional. I added redundancy layers to every financial pathway, just like we do at work. Multiple triggers, multi-factor authentication, behavioral baselines. She tried to time the transfers just before 9 a.m., probably thinking I'd be busy with client cases. She initiated 4 moves in a 17-minute window, but each transaction hit the limits I'd defined years ago. And when she failed to confirm the dual auth within 30 minutes, the system escalated automatically. It flagged the transfers, notified the receiving bank, froze deposits, logged IP addresses, all before she even texted me. That's the part I keep coming back to. She thought she was clever. She thought watching me build the system meant she understood it. But she missed the most important part. I didn't build it for love. I built it because I'd seen what people are capable of. It didn't care who tried to take the money. It only cared that something was wrong, that someone violated the conditions. Melissa didn't just test me, she tested the framework. And it passed. Coldly, quietly, completely. By 10 a.m., I had the full transfer logs in my inbox sorted by timestamp and action type. I printed them out not for evidence yet, just to hold in my hands. Like looking at a blueprint of something that should have never been built. She knew I was the one who designed the system. But she never believed I'd use it to protect myself from her. That was her mistake. The system didn't protect me from her. It protected me despite her. We met when we were 16. She was the one with the loud laugh and the social calendar that never ended. I was the one working part-time at a hardware store and tutoring geometry on weekends. I'd track her soccer stats like I was managing a team, jotting down scores and assists in the back of my notebooks. She thought it was cute. I thought she was everything. We went to the same college, different majors, same dorm building. She majored in communications. I went into finance and data science. We moved in together during senior year, 2 air mattresses, a coffee maker, and a spreadsheet labeled Life Budget 2000. She framed it later as a joke. I kept the original file. After graduation, Melissa got a job in marketing for a local firm. I took the first stable analytics role I could find. We married a year later. Small ceremony backyard reception, a Costco cake that I still say was better than any wedding dessert I've had since. The plan was simple. She would chase the big opportunities, and I'd anchor us. I never minded. She flew out to conferences, spoke at panels, schmoozed with executives. I handled the bills, set up the retirement accounts, built the investment portfolio. I made sure the lights stayed on and the future was secure. But somewhere along the way, things started to shift. It wasn't dramatic. There were no screaming matches or doors slammed in the middle of the night. It was subtle, quiet, like a house settling unevenly, each creak just a little more noticeable than the last. She started taking more solo trips. At first, it was just an extra night after a conference, then entire weekends to decompress. She stopped asking about our financial goals, no more questions about retirement timelines or travel savings. When I'd bring it up, she'd change the subject. Let's talk about something fun, she'd say. We're still young. Last Thanksgiving, my sister pulled me aside. "Is Melissa okay?" she asked gently. "She seems distracted." I smiled and told her it was just work stress. That December, Melissa missed our annual neighborhood holiday party to fly out for a last-minute campaign launch. She sent me a photo from the airport bar. I showed it to everyone like a badge. Look how hard she's working. But the signs were there. I just didn't want to read them. She'd stopped laughing at my dry jokes, stopped asking me to review her presentations. We used to make a tradition out of sitting on the couch Sunday nights reviewing our week, hers in meetings and mine in metrics. She used to say, "You make boring stuff sound like spy work." Then one night she fell asleep on the couch with her phone unlocked. I wasn't snooping. I was covering her with a blanket. But I saw a text from someone named Thomas. "Let me know when it's done." I didn't ask. Not because I didn't care, but because I wasn't ready to know. It's strange how the human mind builds narratives out of hope. I told myself it was work-related, a campaign wrap-up, a project lead-off, anything but what it probably was. Now, in hindsight, I can see the slope. The guest room she suddenly wanted cleared out, the emergency card she opened without telling me, the new password saved to her browser I only noticed once while fixing the printer. She was planning her exit like a campaign. A slow drip of prep work, making sure all the pieces were in place. Backup accounts, private conversations, false pretenses, and I let it happen. I was too busy protecting the systems to notice the person behind the threat. I was watching the numbers and ignoring the silence between them. Melissa had been planning this for months, maybe longer. The logistics, the timing, the calculated confidence of someone who believed they'd already won. But she forgot something important. She wasn't just married to a man, she was married to a system. And that system doesn't get emotional, it gets results. The call came at 11:12 a.m. Friday morning. I was at my desk reviewing a report on vendor-side login anomalies for one of our fintech clients. My phone lit up. "Melissa," I let it ring once before answering. "Eric," she said. Her voice was sharp, tight, just on the edge of panic. "My card's not working." I didn't say anything. "I'm at the airport. I tried to buy lunch. It got declined. I checked the account. It says 0, 0. Where's the money?" I waited a beat. "You're talking about the retirement account." "Yes, I moved the funds. Why can't I access them?" "You initiated a high-volume transfer without two-party authorization," I said evenly. "The fraud detection system flagged it. Standard protocol. The bank froze the transaction pending federal review. 5 to 7 business days, maybe longer." Dead silence. "What did you do?" she finally asked, the calm cracking. "Nothing," I said. "The system did exactly what it was designed to do." Another pause. I could hear the overhead announcements in the background. Gate changes, delayed flights, ordinary chaos. "You need to fix this," she said. "Call the bank. Tell them it was authorized." "I can't do that," I said. "Because it wasn't." "You're being petty." "No, I'm being compliant." She hung up. I stared at the phone for a long moment before setting it down. My coffee had gone cold. I didn't bother replacing it. I just closed my laptop, opened my legal folder, and called a lawyer. William Burke had handled a contract negotiation for one of my clients a year ago. Quiet guy, detail-oriented, former banker turned attorney. Exactly the type of person I wanted on my side. I laid everything out. The texts, the flagged transfers, the automated alerts, the joint account access history. William didn't flinch. "You'll want to file immediately," he said. "No delay. Document everything. Every log, every timestamp, every bank response. The financial misconduct alone will weigh heavily in your favor." "I don't want revenge," I told him. He nodded even though we were on the phone. "This isn't about revenge. It's about structure, order, protection." She violated federal compliance procedures. That's bigger than a marriage issue. I hung up and emailed him the files. Melissa didn't call again that day. The house was silent that night. Too quiet. I made pasta, just boiled noodles and sauce from a jar, and ate standing up. I watched the news, half listened to a segment about a new market regulation policy that might affect crypto platforms. Everything felt hollow. Not heavy, just empty. It wasn't heartbreak, not exactly. I'd already felt the rift growing for months. This wasn't grief over a lost relationship. This was the sharp, clean realization that the person you trusted most had not only stopped loving you but had strategized your erasure. She didn't just want to leave. She wanted to take everything on the way out. She wanted to end the marriage like a hostile merger. Fast, no friction, no witnesses, Just dissolve the partnership and walk away with the assets. But she forgot one crucial fact: I had spent 20 years building safeguards that assumed people could lie, that even loved ones could break rules when money was involved. She hadn't just underestimated me, she misunderstood what I am. I'm not someone who reacts emotionally. I'm someone who builds systems, and those systems just saved me from the wreckage she tried to cause. By midnight, the initial filings were complete. Divorce initiated, legal protections locked in, joint accounts flagged, ownership documents compiled. Melissa had made her move. But the board wasn't hers to control.
Not anymore.
Monday morning started with a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. "Hi, this is Alan Rogers, Director of HR at Brandscope Media. I'm trying to get in touch with Eric Langford. It's about your wife, Melissa. If you could give me a call back, I'd appreciate it." I listened to it twice before calling back. I knew what was coming, even before I heard the tone in his voice. "Eric, thanks for calling. Thanks for..." Look, I don't mean to pry into personal matters, but Melissa was listed as attending our annual strategy summit in Dallas last week. Problem is, we have no record of her checking in. No event badge, no hotel receipt, no flight booked through our corporate portal. "She wasn't in Dallas," I said. "She was in Phoenix." There was a pause. "That's not ideal," he said carefully. "We've also noticed some discrepancies in her expense reports, duplicate entries, unusual vendor charges. It's been flagged before, but now it's under review." I didn't say anything. My heart didn't race. My jaw didn't clench. It just confirmed what I already suspected: the marriage wasn't the only thing she'd been faking. Alan's voice dropped slightly. "If she reaches out to you, or if there's anything we should know, I'll let you know," I said. "Thanks for the call." That afternoon, I got another notification, this time from my own system. Melissa had attempted to open 2 new credit cards over the weekend, both using our joint address. One through a travel rewards program, the other through a retail line. Both were denied due to the fraud alert still active on our retirement accounts. She was scrambling. I pictured her sitting in someone's guest room reloading her bank app, trying to bypass roadblocks she didn't understand. The systems weren't targeting her, they were protecting the structure. She just happened to be the one trying to break it. At 4:03 p.m., I got a call from an unknown Virginia area code. I let it go to voicemail again. "Mr. Langford, this is Gregory Bell from the Federal Financial Integrity Bureau. We're conducting a preliminary investigation into flagged account activity connected to Brandscope Media. We've reviewed some of the automated reporting logs from your private monitoring framework and would like to speak with you further." I stood completely still in my office. The system hadn't just caught Melissa's personal theft. It had flagged something bigger. That evening, I met with Gregory at a government annex building on the edge of downtown. He was straightforward, middle-aged, ex-military, judging by his posture. He placed a folder on the table between us. "Your home-based fraud system flagged multiple transactions linked to corporate accounts that we hadn't yet isolated," he said. "Unusual fund movement, repetitive structures, routing overlaps. Your logs picked up patterns across at least 4 executive accounts at Brandscope." My throat went dry. "Melissa, she's one of them. But not the only one." Gregory opened the folder. Pages of transaction data, IP logs, timestamps. Melissa's company laptop was linked to nearly every entry, every false reimbursement, every suspicious vendor payment. "And you say you weren't aware of this?" "No," I said. "I built the monitoring system to protect my personal finances. I didn't know she was using access to commit corporate fraud." He nodded. "Your logs are clean, consistent, time-stamped and unaltered. They may be the most important evidence we have." "How long?" "We estimate the fraud's been ongoing for close to 2 years. At least $1.8 million misappropriated, possibly more. We've already secured warrants to seize digital assets." I leaned back in my chair. I thought this was about divorce. I thought this was about betrayal. But it wasn't just that. Melissa had taken the skills I'd taught her, the patterns, the caution, the system logic, and used them not to protect what we built, but to dismantle something else entirely. She wasn't just leaving me. She was laundering her exit strategy through a multi-million-dollar fraud ring, and she almost got away with it. Almost. The emergency hearing was scheduled for Thursday morning. Melissa's attorney, Patricia Klein, someone I vaguely recognized from a holiday barbecue years back, filed a motion claiming I had intentionally locked her out of our finances. He used his professional expertise to sabotage joint marital assets, she argued. We're requesting immediate access to funds for basic living expenses. William Burke. My attorney stayed calm. All account freezes were triggered automatically by an established fraud detection framework. Federal compliance standards require reviews for large transfers without joint authorization. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, flipped through the bank records and system logs we'd submitted. I see here that the system flagged the transactions before Mr. Langford even responded. Is that correct? That is correct, Your Honor, William replied. She turned to Patricia. Your client attempted to move over $400,000 in retirement assets without consent, triggering a standard security response. The joint checking account contains $3,000. That should suffice for now. Motion denied aside from $1,500 access for basic expenses. Melissa didn't even look at me as the judge ruled. But outside the courtroom, she caught up to me in the hallway. Eric, she said, her voice low, sharp, with something that sounded like desperation. Why are you doing this? I turned to face her. She looked thinner than I remembered, paler, eyes darkened from lack of sleep or maybe guilt. I'm not doing anything, I said quietly. You are. She stared at me like she was trying to find the old version of me, the one who used to stay up late helping her prep PowerPoint decks and proofread campaign blurbs. But he wasn't there. You could fix this, she whispered. Make the calls, unfreeze the accounts. I built the system to protect us, I said. You triggered it. It's not my job to undo it just because you're the one caught in the net. She looked away, jaw tight, then walked off without another word. That afternoon, I met with Detective Sarah Monroe from the Richmond Financial Crimes Unit. She had a thin folder in her hands and a grim expression. We traced Melissa's IP logs and asset activity through your system, she said, and we found something you should know about. She pulled out a single-page printout, an inquiry from a buyer to a real estate agent asking about my home. The offer was low, way low, nearly $200,000 under market value. The inquiry claimed both homeowners had agreed to sell quickly and the agent had fast-tracked pre-approval for a cash sale. The name on the buyer application, Thomas R. Blake. Melissa's co-worker, her likely accomplice. They were trying to purchase your house at the original buying price, Detective Monroe said. Then flip it at full value. Using a fake buyer, I said flatly. Not just fake Confederate. We think they've done this before. She flipped to the next page, 12 addresses, all tied to employees of Brandscope Media, all marked with similar patterns: recent divorce, marital distress, unusual real estate activity. 12 families, she said. You're the cleanest evidence trail we have. Your system caught the transfer anomalies before the others could be exploited. I didn't speak for a long moment. It was no longer just about me, or the marriage, or even the money. Melissa hadn't just betrayed me. She and Thomas had engineered a scalable system of quiet theft targeting vulnerable families, masking criminal fraud as desperate decision-making. And the only reason it stopped was because I'd built a system that didn't care who it protected, it just worked. And sometimes that's enough. It took less than 3 weeks for the indictments to come down. Melissa Langford, Thomas R. Blake, and 5 other Brandscope executives. The charges spanned multiple counts of wire fraud, corporate conspiracy, and embezzlement. By the time the FBI issued formal notices, they'd already seized laptops, phones, and digital drives. The case moved fast because the evidence was airtight. I didn't speak to Melissa after the hallway conversation, not once. Her calls went unanswered. Her texts sat unread. She was no longer my wife. She was a defendant in a federal case, one I had unintentionally but thoroughly helped build. I was subpoenaed to testify 2 times. The first testimony was purely technical. I walked the prosecution through the architecture of my monitoring system, how it collected data, flagged anomalies, triggered federal compliance alerts. I provided server logs, rule matrices, behavioral pattern baselines. The judge, a federal appointee with a reputation for precision, nodded often and asked questions that showed he understood. No manual override, he asked. No, I replied. That's the point. Once the conditions are triggered, the system responds automatically. It was designed to remove emotional interference, and your wife was aware the system existed. She watched me build it, used parts of it herself, but she never fully understood how much of it was interconnected. The second testimony was more personal. The prosecutor asked about our marriage, about trust, about patterns of behavior. Did you ever suspect your wife was involved in financial misconduct before the flagged transactions? No, I said. Not until the day she tried to transfer our retirement funds. They played audio clips, recordings pulled from wiretapped communications between Melissa and Thomas. In one, her voice was unmistakable. Eric's too focused on his own systems. He'll never check my work accounts. He doesn't mix personal and professional. She was right up to a point. I didn't go digging through her work devices. I respected boundaries, but the system didn't. It caught patterns, not people. And when those patterns intersected, it didn't care who triggered them. In another recording, Thomas said, "You sure he won't notice the house sale? We have to move fast." "He doesn't pay attention to real estate," she replied. "He built firewalls, not fences." That got a reaction in the courtroom. A murmur. The judge banged his gavel once and silence returned. Midway through the trial, Thomas flipped. Faced with a potential 25-year sentence, he accepted a plea deal, full cooperation in exchange for 7 years and restitution arrangements. He named names, described timelines, detailed the fraud structure, how Melissa tracked and adjusted ledger entries to make vendor overpayments look legitimate. She was the backbone, the organizer, the bookkeeper behind the crime. On day 11, Melissa finally took the stand. She didn't deny the transfers. She didn't deny the fake real estate buyer. She didn't even deny the internal embezzlement. She only said, "I thought I could keep it under control." Control, that was the word. She believed she could orchestrate everything, our finances, her fraud, her exit. But she forgot that control isn't real when it's built on lies. It's a house of cards. And the system didn't care how carefully she stacked them. On day 17, the jury returned a verdict guilty on 12 counts of wire fraud, 8 counts of corporate conspiracy, and 2 counts of embezzlement. 18 years, that was the sentence. 18 years in federal prison, no early release before serving at least 15. I sat there as the judge read the ruling. I didn't look at Melissa. I didn't scan the crowd for reporters. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just breathed. The courthouse hallway echoed with footsteps as I walked outside. No press conference, no remarks. I got into my truck, shut the door, and sat in silence for several minutes before turning the key. It was over. Not just the trial, not just the marriage. The entire life I thought I had, the partnership I thought I'd built, the shared future I thought we were saving for. Gone. But I wasn't empty, because the system worked, and in the end, that was enough. I sold the house 6 weeks after the sentencing. The market was still hot, and even with the trial's shadow, I got a clean $510 or $1,000 after fees. It felt strange walking through those empty rooms, kitchen drawers I hadn't opened in months, picture hooks that still carried the outlines of frames now boxed up or trashed. But it didn't feel sad, just finished. I moved to a one-story place in Norfolk. Modest, no guest room, no formal dining table we never used. Just a quiet space with a view of the bay and enough room for my books, my desk, and a fresh start. I started teaching part-time at Old Dominion University in the fall. Financial forensics and modern fraud detection. Twice a week. 30 students in folding chairs, most of them juniors and seniors looking for real-world applications in a world full of corporate smoke and mirrors. I didn't use my full story at first. I just taught the systems, the patterns, the psychology of financial misdirection. But one day during a Q&A, a student asked, "Have you ever used one of these systems in your personal life?" I paused. Then I told them. Not the courtroom version, the real one. The quiet texts, the overlooked signs. The moment I realized someone I trusted had been using my own designs to stage an exit I wasn't meant to survive. The room was silent when I finished. And then someone asked, "How did you stay so calm?" I didn't need to panic, I said. That's what the system was for. It protects when people can't. Melissa sent me her first letter from prison 3 months into her sentence. I didn't realize how far I'd fallen until everything stopped. I thought I was building a better life, but I was just escaping the one I never really appreciated. I read it once, folded it neatly, filed it under documentation. I never replied. More letters came. One around the holidays, one after her first year. Some remorseful, others reflective. None angry. She never asked me to forgive her. She just wanted to be heard. But I had no interest in reopening what the system had already closed. I didn't hate her. I didn't need to. Hate takes energy, maintenance, belief in something still worth holding on to. I had none of that left. The last time I saw her name was in a quarterly restitution update. The court had ordered repayment, slow, symbolic, a few $100s returned each month from her prison earnings. It wasn't about the money. It was about the fact that the system kept working even when people didn't. I still run analytics for my firm in Raleigh remotely now. My dashboards are more refined. My protocols stricter. After what happened, I added features to help other organizations catch internal fraud faster. A few clients said my new tools probably saved them millions. Maybe that's true. Maybe it doesn't matter. What matters is that I know how this story ends. Not with revenge, not with rage, with order, with safeguards. With the realization that people are flawed, but the systems we build don't have to be. Some mornings I walk by the marina with coffee in hand. I watch boats bob quietly in their slips tied down with ropes that haven't failed in a storm yet. There's something calming in that, knowing the anchors are in place. That's how I live now. Not bitter, not broken, just grounded, because betrayal can shatter trust. But a good system endures.